Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining our Millennials Inbound How Training in the Workplace Should Change webinar. To hear today's presentation, please turn on your computer speakers or dial into 877-201-7923. During today's presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. Please feel free to answer any questions you may have throughout today's presentation in the Q&A pod displayed on the bottom left-hand corner of the meeting room window. I will now turn it over to our presenter for today, Brad Azalis. Please go ahead.
Hello. Thank you so much, Patricia. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I am so excited to be here. I see we have people from the Netherlands, from Germany, from Colorado. This is going to be exciting today. How many of you are tired of hearing about millennials? Okay, some of you are probably getting a little bit tired of it. But I'm going to tell you, it's just a new generation that's been raised completely differently. And don't forget, at the bottom of the screen, we're going to be posing some questions. I want you to get involved. Let's make this interactive. Let's have fun. And we're going to go about 45 minutes. And then right at the end, I'm going to stay on for another 15 minutes, and we'll do some question and answer period live. So is everybody with me? Are you excited? We're going to talk a little bit about why millennials act the way they do. And some of you are Gen Xers as well, and you're probably wondering what to do. So let's dig in. And welcome, by the way, once again to everyone. My name is Brad Azalis, and that's an old Hungarian last name. You finally know how to pronounce it. And I was part of the dot-com boom. And during that period, you can see on the screen, it's an Advertising Age article where we appeared all over the world. And all of a sudden, we're exploding, 425% growth rate, and we're building websites, and it was just a very, very crazy time. But I started to notice something very strange. Anybody who was 3 years to 10 years younger than me started to gradually act more and more, I don't want to say strange, but they were ignoring the traditional rules that I was raised with as a manager, as a baby boomer, as somebody who was trained in business. And I just really was confused by all this. But I started to notice that everybody that I hired that was acting this way was born right around 1977, 1984. And I couldn't get my finger on it, but I started working very hard, doing the research, and I finally wrote the book on it, Liquid Leadership, From Woodstock to Wikipedia, and it answers all those questions. So this is the basis of my work. I start with why this generation acts the way they do, and every generation after. So we're going to dig in a little bit. Some of you answered some of the questions at the bottom of the screen. Were your parents strict with you when you were growing up? My father was very strict with me. And what kind of toys did you play with? This is going to determine your adulthood, how you were raised and trained and everything that happened with you. Believe it or not, you were in training as a kid, and it affected how you were going to be as an adult. So let's answer and divide up and talk a little bit about each generation. My theories are a little bit different, and I'll go into that right now. If you look on your screen, we have 4 generations in the workplace. And believe it or not, we've always had 4 generations in the workplace. When I went to work at 16, my grandfather was also working in real estate. So we've always had multi-generational workforces, but here was the difference. Back then, every generation coming up would eventually assimilate into the thinking of the previous generation. But now we have 4 and sometimes 5 generations in the workforce, and each one has a specific behavior that needs to be addressed. Now, I'm not one of those people who says, we need to change everything for millennials. No, I say integrate the best of each generation, because what motivates a millennial will not motivate a boomer. So we have to figure out what that's going to be. And those of you in training and HR, over the next 40 minutes or so, I'm going to really delve deeply into the different learning styles and things that they're going to need to know about. So here we go, generational stuff. The way I look at it is this. Anybody born before 1977 was raised in a linear fashion. They were taught to study hard, listen to the authority figure, the teacher. You had to be afraid of your boss. You couldn't move ahead unless somebody older and wiser said, okay, now you can move forward. So this is very linear. It takes time. And in most companies, you see it in basically how we choose people based on age. That guy's been with the company 20 years. We need to bump him up. Anybody born after 1977 was raised as a digital native. They've been raised on several different things, not only technology, but parenting changed as well. So I'm going to go into that a little bit deeper. Now, I asked you the question at the very beginning, were your parents strict with you? Were they? Okay. My father was a Hungarian, the firstborn Hungarian child from Hungarian grandparents here in the United States. So my father was very strict. On the morning of my 18th birthday, he walked into my bedroom, knocked on the door, of course, and he said, all right, according to the law, you're a man now, so you have three choices in this household. First, you can get a job and start paying room and board around here. And your second choice is you can go to college and I'll try and help. And I said, Dad, what's the third choice? And he's like, well, you can pack up and move out, buddy. And I was like, what? He goes, hey, my house, my rules. And then he was quiet for a while, and he leaned in and he said, all right, don't tell your mother we had this conversation, all right? So some of you are laughing, but if you are a baby boomer, you were raised by the greatest generation, the silent generation, the World War II, Great Depression generation. And this generation was born between 1923 and 1945. They experienced the Great Depression, like I said, and they're very strict. It's about God and country. They didn't have to network. They kept their heads down, usually at their jobs, and just did what they had to do. If they're still in the workforce today, they're usually a partner at a law firm, the top guy and the chairman of the board, or they have a retirement job at Walmart. It's the two extremes when it comes to the greatest generation. And my father was part of the greatest generation. He was born in 1921, and he was very, very strict. He didn't see parenting as something to bond over. His job was to prepare me for life, and that meant he was strict. So get in there and answer, if you have some of those traits. What traits do you have that were passed on to you from that next generation? And also, depending on what country you live in, too, your parents might have been much more strict, or maybe they were gentle, maybe they were very loving. So let's move on. Most of you said that you're not from the greatest generation. So let's go into baby boomers. Now, baby boomers, as you probably know, were born after World War II. GIs were coming home, and they were getting romantic, and there was prosperity everywhere, and everybody was excited. And they were the first generation to enter the public school system. So that's where we get this strict adherence to authority and obey the rules. And guess what? This is very linear. And we took that into our careers where we trained, we listened to authority figures, and we feared the boss. And we knew our place inside the organization, if you remember. We didn't think we could approach the CEO of any corporation unless we were old enough. You didn't speak to your boss out of turn, so you knew your place. But I want to get into something because this is where the big shift took place. There's a subset of baby boomers called the cusp boomer. How many of you are in the cusp boomer category? Let's go into that. The cusp baby boomer is my generation. We were the ones who are in our mid to early 50s. We were born around 1958 to 1964. Now, why does this matter? Well, I have a stepbrother that was 12 years older than me, and he was worried about going to Vietnam. And I was worried about getting home to watch the ABC after-school special. And everything that changed back then is the toys changed, the way we were trained as kids. And for those of you who have the video cam set up, this was the most interactive device that a baby boomer could use. I'm holding up to the screen a GAF ViewMaster. Remember this, boomers? Yes. This was having to use your creative imagination and going through different adventures by buying a pack of adventures. And believe it or not, the most controversial toy in 1963 for the cusp boomer was G.I. Joe. Okay? I know that sounds like it's a little crazy, but what we were exposed to as children is affecting us today. And some of you work in HR or learning and development, you're probably sitting there going, why are people leaving? Why aren't people listening to me? Why? The reality is boomers, as you know, I can storm a castle with 100 boomers. It's very easy because boomers obey rules. And most of you, it looks like you're a cusp boomer. I see everybody interacting on here. Let's see. Also, welcome, Suzanne. I know you're a little late, but welcome aboard. We're going through the generations, and we're going to go through the cusp boomer. Let's continue with that. How many of you who are cusp boomers, did you go to the arcade to play video games? Do you remember that? You would go and you pump some quarters in, and we'd have a lot of fun. And then something changed around 1977, but I'm going to get into that in just a minute. Here's what cusp boomers were exposed to. We had to go to the arcade to really get into the video games. And how many of you remember that playing an arcade game was kind of a time suck? Before computers, before anything else, once you got on a video game, it was like, what happened? 2 hours just went by like that. Well, that slowly started to become sort of the media of choice for each generation after. And you can see here on the screen, on the PowerPoint presentation, some of you played with Barbies, Easy Bake Oven. How many of you played Monopoly or played with G.I. Joe or GAF Viewmaster? Cusp boomers actually got exposed to a little bit of that technology when they were teenagers. And why does that mean anything? Well, it's going to change the brains of everybody born after 1977, especially 1984. And welcome aboard, Chadwick. Good to see you here from Utah. Excellent. And Liz, great. You remember arcade games? Good. Excellent. In 1984, yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit. A lot of you, it looks like a lot of you are cusp boomers. We have a good mix here on today. Okay. Here we go to the next one. Now, Generation X. I want everybody to know something. Generation X is probably the most frustrated out of the generations, and here's why. Generation X, you showed up and listened to all the rules you were told to follow by the older baby boomer, and you said, you have to obey the rules, you have to respect authority, you take your time and move up the ladder slowly, and don't forget to wear a suit and tie, and all these things, and now you realize it's all, pardon me, BS a little bit. And it's a little frustrating. I know it. In most organizations, the boomers are tripping over you to shake hands with the millennial. And I know it's frustrating. But a lot of the companies I work with, believe it or not, in the leadership and development field, they are being run by Gen X. And they're excited because they have a little bit of the control over what is going to be taught and how it's going to be taught. So for those of you in that category, I take my hat off to you because that's the one way to get rid of that frustration. You know that you're ready for those leadership positions right now. And step up to the plate, take them. They're all yours. They're ready for the taking. But the real thing I want to push with Generation X is everything started to change from this point on because you're the latchkey kids, the first generation that had both parents working. So you came home on your own a lot. You also got to see John Hughes films like 16 Candles and TV shows like Knight Rider. But the John Hughes films kind of showed that the outlier, and pardon this is only a phrase I'm using for now, but the sort of the loser, the weirdo, now became the hero in these stories in the movies and on television shows and things like that. And some of what you were exposed to, besides television and video games, you were kind of balancing between the two. How many of you in 1984 got like a really great game station and started playing because the games got a little more sophisticated? And you're a little bit cynical, I would say, because some of your bands reflect that, which is like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. These are all bands that are reflecting the grunge movement and sort of Generation X angst that was being passed on from kind of taking a look at reality and saying, what my parents are telling me isn't lining up with how I feel and what is really going on. So I hope that helps with Gen X because I know you guys are coming into leadership positions. You're very hardworking. Yes, I have to agree with that. You guys work like a boomer. You work and you work and you work. And that's part of, I think, where the frustration is coming from. I could be wrong. But yeah, responsible, determined, family's important. Yes, I see all of that. Yeah. Hell yes. I see a lot of responses here from Gen Xers. Good. Excellent. Coming through. Yes, a lot of you have these traits. I like the fact that you'll speak up when it's time. And you speak up in such a way that fits within the corporate paradigm. You know how to present a good argument. That's what I love. So let's move on. I see a lot of great interaction here. Let's go into Generation Y, Millennials. And believe it or not, they called everybody Generation Y when they first showed up. And that was anybody born after 1977. And guess what they were exposed to right around 1984? The gaming came into the homes full time. The arcades kind of died. And now you had Nintendo, Sony, Sega, all these companies showing you how to play a video game. And the gaming engines got more complex and everything else. Well, why does this matter? Well, if you're in HR and training, you know that millennials usually get bored very quickly, and it's because they were exposed to computers. Yes, video games are computers at a very early age. So they've been raised to manipulate digital information before they could read, write, and in some cases speak. And that has changed everything. So we went from the GAF Viewmaster, hello, to this. So there's complexity involved, and we're going to get into the learning styles soon, how that affected learning styles. But the thing that's great, I mean, the subset of Generation Y is millennials. And some people will say from 1984 to the year 2000 really defines the millennial. But really what the millennial is defined by is they don't obey the traditional rules. They don't like hierarchy. They want to have access to their teachers. Through the years, they were able to call the teacher by their first name, things like that. And so they expect that when they're inside a corporation. They want to talk to the CEO. They feel their contribution is right in line with, equal to a 40-year-old who's been there 20 years. Let's see. GoldenEye was the best game. Okay, we have a couple of others. Did anybody play Planetfall? Do you remember Planetfall? What else? What were some other video games? Anybody else? Boom, boom. Hi, Eric. GoldenEye and Mario Kart 64. Those are great. Now, it might sound silly what I'm talking about, but the reality is how you were trained as a kid determined how you would work as an adult. So if video games came into the mix and other things, it shifted everybody's perception, thinking, behavior, expectations, and speed at which they work. And these habits are innate, and it's very hard to change them because they grew up with them. And I'll go through this really quick. This is part of my work, but this was the first generation to really be immersed in internet and video games. You remember when they tried to colorize movies? Well, they thought that the reason Generation Y and Millennials weren't watching old movies is because they're in black and white. And that wasn't the truth. What it was is everybody was moving over to video games. And you were also raised, if there are any millennials on here, it looks like we have 3 in the room, 3 millennials. Welcome. I'm not here to pick on you. I'm here to look at this behavior and utilize it in the HR and L&D space. Because you guys, you move faster. It's going to be fun if you utilize millennial knowledge. But anyways, getting back to what influenced you guys, the internet, video games, interactive toys, you were raised with Teddy Ruxpin and Speak and Spell, and instead of sitting and watching a television the way boomers do and waiting to be entertained, you sit forward and you interact with your devices. You were also raised on child-centric parenting and teaching. That's why I asked some of you if your parents were very strict in the very beginning, because millennials, in most cases, were raised by parents who try to be their friends, and they consider their parents role models, friends, mentors, things like that. So what did that do? I mean, we're hearing the psychological part of it, but what it did is it flattened the hierarchy in the home. And then when they went into the school system, they were encouraged to call their teacher by their first name and collaborate, and everybody's interacting. And what happened again was hierarchy flattened in the school system. And then we were shocked when Generation Y entered the workforce and their parents were very interactive by putting the resume over there. And then when they did get hired, they would walk right up to the CEO and say, hey, Chet, I can show you how to run this company because I have an MBA. Now, I don't want you to judge this behavior. I want you to realize what created it. The flattening of the hierarchy was done by child-centered parenting and child-centered teaching. But the video games are a big thing. And also something else you may not realize is Star Wars. Star Wars came out, and it started to change everything. Star Wars was the beginning of, guess what? Science fiction became science fact. So if you look at the top 10 blockbuster movies over the last 35 years, and you can even throw in Star Wars The Force Awakens, you'll start to see that there's a pattern in the movies and in the television shows. What we begin to see is a young person uses technology or magic to fight off evil adults. And they are expected to battle them and fight and have very adult dialogue that wasn't there before. If you look at the top 10 blockbuster movies, 7 or 8 altogether were science fiction or fantasy driven. From Harry Potter to The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, to Doogie Howser. The pressure to be successful on millennials and utilize technology to be successful is built into all their stories. Now, some of you, let's sit back and say this. Yes, Star Trek, The Next Generation, sci-fi movies, all had more effect than remaining science fiction. Yes, if you were in industrial nations, you saw Star Trek. Star Trek, if you remember, Captain's Log, Star Trek should have and did influence NASA scientists. But here's where my work jumps in. Star Wars made science fiction cool all over the world. If you were in Guam, you saw Star Wars. If you were in Canada, Japan, Australia, you saw Star Wars. A lot of people did not see Star Trek till years later. It was the first global phenomenon. Now, guess what? They both had a huge influence. Star Trek and Star Wars, yes, because a lot of our NASA scientists, even our astronauts, like to be posed as if they're on the Enterprise and things like this. So yes, but from 1977 on, science fiction opened up all these doorways of possibilities. And look at, guess what? Look at all the technology we're using today. 90% of what you saw in Star Wars and Star Trek, we have today. Think about that for a minute. We have all the pads. We have the iPhones. We have Wi-Fi and networks. When I went to see Star Wars in 1977, they were trying to show us Wi-Fi networks when we had rotary dial telephones. Think about that for a minute. We have advanced more in the last 35 years than we did in the previous 150. And that should make you realize that's the imagery inside the head of the millennial. Let's see what some of these are in there. Okay, millennials are changing reality. Closed-minded people are making it worse for them than others. Okay, yeah, they are. They are kind of changing reality because the rules have gone away. James Bond was a big influence on me as a baby boomer. One guy could solve all the problems in the world. Rotary dial phones, you like that one? Yes. Yeah. These are all fantastic influences. And I don't want anybody to get frustrated or furious because there's a lot of angst there about, well, millennials this and millennials that. Look, we raised them. Baby boomers, you raised millennials to be exactly the way they are. So now we have to deal with it, manage it, and prepare for it, and use the very best that they have to offer. So let's move on. I want to show you one last thing. There are 3 slides I want you to get excited about, and that is this. Boom. These are the 3 major influences that changed everything from 1977 and 1984 onward, and that is Star Wars and science fiction. Video games came into the household and became competitive. By 1984, they were multi-level, multiplayer role-playing games, and child-centric parenting and child-centric curriculum in the school system. And this is something you may not have realized. Dr. Michio Kaku said it best: Star Wars initiated a paradigm shift. And he said that on the TV show, The Prophets of Science Fiction. And look it up. You can find the one where he talks about George Lucas changing the way we look at things. Hey, Bill Nye the Science Guy. Thanks, Joel. That was funny. I like him. He's very good. Yes. Who else? What else we got here? Oh, wow. Ella, hi. Yes, we created them. They're awesome. Don't get me wrong. Yes, they are awesome. But we can't look at them through the same rule book that we created. Boomers are looking at millennials. We took out all the curriculum and said, hey, get up at 5:30 and be afraid of your boss. We took that out, and now we're looking at them going, why aren't they more successful? Because we didn't raise them the way we were raised. And by the way, here's one last slide. Kind of really, this should hit home for a lot of the women here. And I hope it does, because from 1977 on, we had a shift. We went from women's roles, it was kind of being the damsel in distress, to becoming a warrior princess. Princess Leia launched a whole different world for women. When I do my workshop on this, Cracking the Millennial Code, one of the women who was she was a young Gen Xer, kind of almost a millennial, not quite. She said her favorite thing to play with as a kid was a Princess Leia doll. And I thought, wow, that's kind of interesting. And you can see on the screen, I've put up science fiction really helped drive a lot of women's roles becoming empowered and strong and kicking it up a notch. And you can see everything from Princess Leia to Xena Warrior Princess to Captain Janeway on Voyager, even Underworld, and The Hunger Games. That's one of them. Oh, Battlestar Galactica, one of my favorites, and also Firefly. Okay, I'm reading some of the responses. Subgroup. The world has changed in the last 30 years. Yes, you're right, Fred. We broke it up into sort of these 4 categories, but I want you to realize that the best way I can put it is this: from here on out, anybody born now on planet Earth will be exposed to technology. Anybody before was not. So they're more linear in the way their brains work. Millennials, they're almost like an amusement park in there. Any millennial will let you know that there's all kinds of things going on, subcategories, things that are happening. And the sharp millennials I work with, they know how to manage their time really, really well. So I just really want you to get across in this that training, learning and development, teaching, government, everything, from this moment on, we're opening up to a whole different world from here on out. And I want to ask a question. How many of you out there think more like a millennial? How many of you who maybe are baby boomers who think more like a millennial? I do. I know I do. I like to break paradigms. I like to fight against things. I like to question things. I like to get creative. And some of you might be a millennial who thinks more like a boomer. Or maybe you're even Gen X and you think more like a millennial, but you have a couple of boomer traits. These are not boxes to fit people in. These are not hard boxes. These are actual open spaces and clues that we can use. Now, I don't want to run out of time. We're going to save some of our questions for later, but I really want to move on. We don't have a lot of time left, but I want to get in here. Let's see. And this is really what you need to know. 1977, the video game came into the household. They were simplistic. Magnavox and Atari weren't so great, but by 1984, 2 things entered the home. It wasn't just the video games, but the home computer entered with the Apple, and this changed the brains of anybody born after 1984, especially. All right, we're going to dig in deeper. You have a Gen X and Gen Y. I'm seeing some of the great interaction here. I love it. All right, now I'm going to stop talking about the generations and really start delving deeper into some of the tactics that you can use at your own companies in your programs. And let's get in here. I was working with this company here in New York City that they really work with about $12 trillion in assets. Pretty impressive, right? Well, they had a very progressive C-level team that founded the company, and they were excited, and they said, this is our vision. We're going to give back. We're going to be the kind of company that cares about others. We're going to do all these things. And they had a list, and this is what the company is. And they were at least progressive enough to do a town hall meeting where they just talked about this, and they sat with their people managers, all in different age groups coming in and talking, mostly Generation X and a few millennials. And the heroic conversation was to allow for a conversation to happen that may not be popular. And you have to set the ground rules for this. You have to say it's a sanctuary, an open sanctuary. No one is going to be reprimanded for talking the truth. So you have to create a truth-telling environment. You can't be afraid a little bit of that. So these heroic conversations have to deal with reality. And what this company did is they realized there was a huge disconnect between what was actually happening in the day-to-day work environment as opposed to the vision that the C-level executives had for the company. So they were really smart because they took their L&D and their HR department and they started putting together curriculum that would bring the two sides together. Because there's no reason to be at war inside a company. We have to be on the same page with each other. And when people are excited and have fun and love working together, they will work harder than anybody else you've ever seen. So I recommend getting in there and doing heroic conversations. And is your company preparing for millennial employees? That's something to really think about. And I'm looking at some of the answers here. Nothing, social media, things like that. It's much more, it's deeper than you would imagine, preparing for this next generation. Because as you know, they walk away. And here's part of the reason why we really, really, really have to get involved and change the dialogue. First of all, Harvard looked at a study, I think it was Gallup or Pew, and they found out that they weren't training leaders till they hit about 45 years of age. Most people get their first training or their first leadership position at about 35, but they don't get trained in leadership until they're 45. That's 10 years of bad habits. And you now have a generation that wants to be in the leadership role quicker, much faster. So if you want employee retention and engagement, start creating leadership programs for 20-somethings. Everybody should be involved. Don't just divide them up. Get them together. Integrate everybody. We want to hear the best and brightest out of everybody. The second reason you really need to get in there and change your training is, guess what? What do you think the average median age is in the United States now? And you can Google this. Younger turn for a graying nation. You can look this up. It's in the New York Times. Guess what? Boom. The average median age is 22 years of age. That means there are more 22-year-olds in the United States right now than there are 53-year-olds, okay? And now I'm not sure how this is in other parts of the world or other parts of the other countries and things like this, but we have to really, really take a look at this data in your own countries and kind of say, okay, we have to prepare for this a little bit because boomers are going to be forced into retirement. And let me take a look at some of the responses. Yes, Gen Y. Hey, Chad. Demographics. Yeah, forget hitting the demographic cliff. Now, boomers are going to be forced to retire at 10,000 boomers per day. I don't believe that's going to happen because a lot of boomers are looking for jobs. Yeah, and they're looking for it. You know, you're going to see a lot more boomers working at Starbucks, let's put it that way, because they can't retire. 53% of boomers did not save for retirement, and the ones who did save for retirement, 40% of them lost everything in 2008. So we're going to have an interesting road going on. Okay, we have a couple of questions in the side. I will address them after we're over with the main presentation. But this should give you some exciting news and some depressing news if you're moving forward. You should really take into consideration that the average median age is 22. And I would just say out there, you know, are you training millennials to lead? Are you just ignoring them? Are you passing your knowledge base on? Are you really taking your educational program to another level because you have boomers that are about to retire? And if you haven't passed on the knowledge, it's lost. So you got to get in there and start having fun. All right, let's move forward. Sorry we're going so fast. We have a lot of ground to cover. I love this quote: train people well enough so they can leave, but treat them well enough so they don't want to. That's by Richard Branson. Love that one. That's a great quote. And by the way, we're going to rebroadcast this, I believe. Okay, let's get in here. Here's part of the reason why I love telling that story about the company I was working with. The C-level executives, they had a very definite structure or blueprint that they thought worked, and then they discovered that the users, they didn't see it that way. That's the real reason why you have to keep adapting and changing and moving your programs around. And I want to get into right now developing your curriculum on multiple platforms. And you really have to do this. And I'm going to explain why over the next 5-10 minutes, and then we're going to wrap up. But the real reason you have to change and start really getting into changing your curriculums and looking at devices out there and addressing all the learning styles is because, boom, remember this? This is what I like to call the traditional career path paradigm. And if you look at it, most of you remember at 20 years of age, you were expected to go into the mailroom and shut up and keep your mouth shut and listen to the boss and obey the rules. And then maybe when you hit about 30, somebody noticed you in the company and they said, oh, that guy's got moxie, or that woman's really ambitious. We need to hire her and get her up in the upper management. And then by 40 and 50, you were supposed to have the corner office, a great salary, and everybody was going to look up to you, and young people were going to ask you questions because you had all this experience. And some of you are going to ask you, how's that working out so far? It's not, because this is a paradigm or a career path that is based on 20th century industrial age model. And it requires age plus time plus experience plus study, and that will get you your status and your salary. And let me ask you this question. How many of you started using a computer when you were 20 or 30 years of age? You have young people who've been using it since they were kids. And what started to create a lot of problems in the company is the 28-year-old MBA would want to jump in where the 40-year-old was, who had taken 16 years to get there and had learned every version of the computer to get there. And suddenly somebody's coming right out of college. The modern corporation does this. Boom. They flatten the hierarchy, and they have team leaders that really, their job is to mentor and show the way. Because they have the experience, they can see that maybe they're going in the wrong direction. We're also working with creating digital products. So in a lot of ways, you don't know what the outcome is going to be with programming and things like that. So managing the digital worker is very different in the 21st century. And this is probably the model, it's not probably, it is the model that Google uses, W.L. Gore, DuPont. They want hot ideas, they want the latest ideas, and in order to do that, you have to get groups together. And by the way, millennials learned this through video games. They learned this sort of way of working and collaborating through video games and then the school system. Let's move on real quick. Here's the other thing that I think is pretty important. How many of you remember in high school, especially boomers, boomers on the line, you were exposed to verbal, visual, auditory, and in some cases, vo-tech. So your teacher was probably at the blackboard going, all right, here's your homework assignment, and I want this all done by tomorrow. And if you don't have it done, you're going to be suspended or you get an F. There was one way to learn, and that was you had verbal, visual, writing on the blackboard, and auditory, you listened, and then you go home and study. So it was kind of private. You listen to music. That was the only way anybody learned. Nobody cared about how you learned back then. My father didn't care how I learned. And some of you went to vo-tech, and that is kind of an apprenticeship model for plumbing or for electronics or auto repair, things like that. And several weeks ago, I was in Barnes & Noble, and a friend of mine is studying for his PhD, and it was very bizarre to watch a grown man almost balled up in his chair with his knees up real high like this, and he's studying and biting his lip. And I looked at him and I said, that's his preferred style of learning. And guess what? Anybody born after 1977, 1984, they were exposed to all 9, even 10 different styles of learning. They were encouraged to collaborate. They were encouraged to speak up. They were encouraged to stand at their desk. Things that would get a boomer paddled, they did. They would collaborate. The mathematical, logical, kinesthetic. Some people like to snap their fingers while they think. Tactile. They were never reprimanded for this. And guess what else happened? Video games exposed them to all of this. Everything here, the computer and the video games exposed them to all of this that you see on the screen. Now, the only thing they weren't exposed in, which was the thing that boomers were and Gen Xers were exposed into, and that was face-to-face conversation. So a lot of your millennials may need to be trained with Toastmasters or giving speeches and things like that. And that's kind of why we have to change things. Here, I want to show you this. The real key influences, they were immersed in all learning styles, as you can see, through video games. But this is really where the crux of my work takes off, because when I show this list, most people go, whoa, how do you learn in a video game? Or what do you learn when you play a video game? I know some of you know the answer to this, but I'm going to just jump in. You have to learn the rules of the politics intuitively. You have to sense them. You have to test with the boundaries. Your participation in risk and failure is the only way to learn. The faster you fail, the faster you learn. Speed is paramount to mastery. Increase your risk, and guess what? You get increased rewards. And you're immersed in a character. In other words, you're an avatar playing the game. You're not watching. Now, baby boomers, we were taught that everything's linear. You do it a certain way. And if you screw up, your career is over. What this generation was taught, the more you fail, the more you learn. That's the opposite, okay? And they've learned to use team players, using their individual skill sets to get ahead, to win. Leadership roles are rotational according to skill set, and they consistently look for new ways to win. They actually call them cheats. They go for booklets and things like this. Some of you remember them. You remember some of those cheats and things like that. And once you win the game, you storm the castle, you kill the trolls, forget everything you just learned, because the rules at the next level are changing. So does any of this sound familiar? You learn by doing. Let's see, video games are learning styles. Yep. Face-to-face, I just said that. Yeah, it doesn't include the face-to-face. And that's what they need to learn. Drone pilots, yes, Mark. Guess what? The Xbox used to be the operating system for the drone pilots. So they were trained in that as kids, yes. Failure is always an option, especially in science. Depends on where you grew up and what you were working on. Yeah, drone pilots are going away with automation because they have AI now. And Fred, hi Fred. Hi again. Yep, it's not about winning. It's about continuing and learning, yes. Millennials may, they're going to disrupt everything because they don't see some of the things that boomers were required to learn and see and stuff like that. So it's just going to change for you when you start doing training. And let me jump in here real quick. I'm going to go quick now. If you've never heard of a mastermind group, I suggest you go look them up. I teach mastermind groups and train people who come together to learn from each other. You want to get a diverse group together, and this comes from Napoleon Hill, who's one of America's first self-help gurus. But for businesses, this is actually what a board of directors is. It's a mastermind group. It's what a management group is. It is a mastermind group, and they come up with ideas and new ways of doing business. And here's Napoleon Hill's definition of that: the coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose or a definite outcome. So if 4 or more people want to get some business done, they should get together and start talking about how that should be done in a better way and support each other in each department in a way that needs to get done. So you're going to see, when you form your own mastermind group, you're going to see that there's a lot of diversity, there's a lot of backgrounds, that people bring to the table, and those will help you get a grasp on what's going on in the company at all different levels. It's kind of like having confidants in key areas. So you bring them in and you form a team that's going to help you take your L&D up to another level. And mix it up. Have a lot of millennials, Gen Xers, even boomers in different departments. See what works, what sticks, what really makes a difference. And this is one of the things you have to realize about this great generation. Millennials are about diversity. Women in the workplace, they're used to it. Black, Latino, people from India, Germany, Russia, Japan, they're all used to this. And they expect it in their work environment. And I say about time. It's awesome. It's exciting. And this is part of the reason why you have to have a diverse team, because I've seen areas where they come in and men design the workspace, and the women say there's not enough bathrooms here. Little things like that. Little suggestions that will help your company run smoother and better. Hi, David. Hey, welcome aboard. Cool guy. So what happens when you don't have a diverse team? Well, look at the different backgrounds. It isn't just about nationality or race or groups or anything. My first thing I learn is if I see, if I've chosen a group, let's say that's all men, I want at least one woman or two women on that team because we need to balance it out. Men are hunters by nature. Women are nurturers. And they found that the top S&P 500 companies that had at least 3 women on their board of directors did 40% better in the marketplace. So you want to have, you want to try and get that diversity in there in some way, shape, or form. Let's move on real quick. I don't have a lot of time. Next one is, this is another one of my favorite quotes, and this has been running around lately since the autobiography or the biography of Steve Jobs. It doesn't make sense to hire smart people and then tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. And that is a real key to changing and transforming your L&D, your learning and development, and your training courses as well, because you have a generation that has been exposed to so many types of technology. And here's the ones that I've listed here. Don't forget gamification. Risk reward, they like that, but we have classroom environments, textbook learning, video interactive learning, on-site apprenticeships. One I like in the pharmaceutical industry is they still use flashcards. Anybody remember flashcards? You're supposed to say what's happening right away. And go off-site programs as well. I know some companies that will fly regional directors into one area to give a presentation, so people don't have to move around. You just do regional stuff or on-site or off-site programs. Also call up your local colleges. They still have courses that can help you in your management and your leadership. I went to NYU just for a couple of classes back when I was running my company, my C-level company. So, all right, let's move on real quick. And here's one of the things. I use a lot of different technology, and I know companies that are using iPads, and they're out in the field, and they're doing all these things because it's just easier. The technology really, really has come a long way. They have claims and litigation adjusters out in the field with iPads in the field, and they're authorizing payments right there after a natural disaster. This is exciting that you have an arm that's extended out into the world, and your sales division can run it and do things like this. So you can use iPhones, you can use apps, and the price and the cost of these things are coming down. And right now today, I hope you've enjoyed this entire webinar because I've done it on Adobe Connect. And MeetingOne and Adobe Connect, if you haven't taken a look at what they do, I use a lot of these devices. This was the smoothest presentation I've had today. We've had some great engagement, I think. Has everybody enjoyed themselves? Just type it in there if you had some fun, if you had a good time, if you learned a lot. We can continue this dialogue. But the great thing I love about Adobe Connect software is you can touch all the learning styles. Some of you see me on video, some of you are on phone, some of you listening in. We've worked for a couple of months on personalizing how I want to present this to you. It's a customized meeting space, and we're utilizing video, PowerPoint, my voice, audio, and everything else. and they will set everything up for you. If you want to do this for your training programs, I suggest you get in contact with them. The next slide, I'll show you some of that. But you can use traditional landlines. They monitor the audience engagement, and you can't see this, but I have a gauge on the side talking about all the engagement that's happening, and it's intuitive and it's user-friendly. So real quick, I'm going to close up a little bit. Are you doing what you need to do to train this next generation? Are they disrupting the heck out of everything, or are they changing us for the better? I think millennials are changing us for the better because we've ignored the human component, and we've ignored a little bit of the training and learning styles, and we can utilize that now more and more. And it's very cheap to do it now. You have technology that, for a simple budget, can get things done. But you need to change now, because guess who's coming next? The cloud generation, Generation Z. And they don't even think like millennials, so get ready. And if you need to get a hold of me, I'm going to stick around, and we'll do a Q&A. But you can, if you want to start your own training with MeetingOne, there's your contact information on the left of the slide. And if you want to get a hold of me, I can help you customize a program that engages all the generations. I get very excited about this because webinars, workshops, training, and because I've been a C-level executive, I love sitting with your C-level executives as well in your company and talking mano-a-mano, one-on-one with them, and really getting into what they need to do. I've done it with several companies. One of the companies I was really proud, they had bought a company that was all women, and they really, truly wanted to integrate women into the C-level more and more and more. They brought me in to do that, to mediate that. So I do all kinds of work in this space. So give me a shout-out. Email me at brad@liquidleadership.com. I want to thank everybody today. This has been incredibly exciting. I've had a lot of fun. Thank you for joining us. I am very proud that a lot of you came in, and we had a lot of great interaction today, and that you came in from all over the world. And thank you so much. I'm going to stick around, and we'll talk a little bit more. But thank you. And let's go over to the Q&A session. Thanks, Chad. World War Z, if you haven't seen that with Brad Pitt, that's the zombie movie. Thank you. You're welcome, Jaron. Thank you. Melinda, hi. Research. Yeah, Gen Z, all the research is just beginning with Gen Z. They're just starting. What are 1993 and later called newly minted college grads nowadays? Well, they're still under some of the millennial heading. Some people will claim that the 18-year-olds are the end of millennials. I don't adhere to that. I say if somebody's about 21 years of age on up to 32 to 35, they're definitely a millennial. And they come under that subheading, but they're using it ubiquitously. They're using millennial language for anybody who's Generation Y. And like I said, that's anybody born after a certain date. What's the influence of the high rate of divorce of parents from millennials? Well, we're in a sort of a post-modern world, and we don't come together anymore for the same reasons. Marriage is very different now. Gary Zukav, I think, talked about this. He said, in the old days, the 1800s all the way back to whenever, to Babylon, women needed men to protect them, and men needed women to teach them about nurturing and becoming a father or a parent and things like this. But nowadays, women can make the same salary as men because that's the protection part. And men now are encouraged to nurture themselves. So we don't have the same reasons for marriage anymore, and we're kind of in a sort of a postmodern, post-industrial age world where all the rules have changed. So I hope that answers that question. And thank you, Jerome. Ella, how you doing? A lot of on-the-job leadership training is mentoring. How do millennials respond, or do you want textbook training? I have looked at I've done hundreds of keynotes and trainings on this. I have found that millennials, they're dying for mentorship because all the rules have been removed. They know something's missing deep down inside, but at the same time, we don't want to control that explosive creativity with technology and with getting things done faster. So you're really are looking at apprenticeship models, reverse mentorship, where we start to listen to their input. They're treated as equals. This is another reason why millennials are also called echo boomers, because they act just like a boomer who's been around for 40 years. They don't know that age and your place in a company. So sometimes they step up and just start talking, whereas a boomer was taught, oh, you don't do that. So you want to. I like apprenticeship models. I think they're great. Also, Ella, you briefly mentioned gamification. What is that exactly? Well, gamification is where you increase the risk, or you get somebody to do something and then you reward them as soon as they do it. And a simple way of looking at gamification is, how many of you work with a certain bank and every time you make a purchase you get something back, you get cash back? Well, that's gamification. You've done something and now you get a reward. Boom. Like monkeys hitting a cherry juice, dispenser. Gamification can be used in a very positive way, whereas I know one company that's doing this. Every time they have a 2-year window, and every employee is required to do some of the trainings in the curriculum that they have there, and once they've gotten that accredited training in their own universities internally, then they give them a raise automatically, or they move them up to a certain position. So that's gamification that's being used within the HR and the L&D space. You want to create a curriculum where if you pass this and you get a certain grade or you get a certain level, you get this risk and this reward comes along. So you're always upgrading. Millennials constantly want to be upgraded and challenged. It's just that they want to have it done faster than boomers. Boomers can wait 5 years to move ahead, even in a job that we didn't like. Millennials want to move within a year. And sometimes some companies, they do a peer-to-peer lateral moving around of people. So they kind of do a hands-off. Let your peers decide if you're good enough to move into that position and lead. So I hope that answered your question, Ella. Lynn, how you doing, Lynn? Can you talk more about the actual roles on the mastermind team and some of the most important conversations or topics that need to be discussed there? Absolutely. You need a leader within the mastermind group. And that leader looks at several things. They go round robin. Everybody gets 10 minutes to talk about their challenges, their wins that week, things like that. And then they go into what's called a hot seat. Each division person will talk about the challenges they're dealing with that week or that month. And the rest of the group helps them either solve the problem or move forward in creating new divisions, new solutions, things like this. So what begins to happen is within 3 months, if you meet once a month with support meetings on the sides, off-site sometimes you can do this, what begins to take place is you form a group consciousness where you're supporting each other and you're helping within that team's division or group wherever they're at. And it's not a responsibility group. It is a solution-generated, tear the company into a new level, or sometimes keep things perfect, running smoothly. What a mastermind group is the group comes together and challenges each other to either make things better or get things reinvented or restructured or move forward. But the goal and the intent has to always be there. And you need actually 2 people. One person to run the mastermind group consistently. It should be the same person. And that can rotate at the end of the year. They serve for 1 year in that. And then the next person that's sitting next to them takes notes and is the timekeeper. So it's almost like a board of directors meeting, except your goals and people's responsibilities are individualized. So I hope that helps. And also go pick up Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, or do some research on it, because mastermind groups are the way to transform your business. Richard, last question, it looks like. Richard asks, how do you address unrealistic entitlement expectations with millennials or Gen Z entering a workplace? The focus on immediate promotions or raises may cause issues, especially in public sector jobs. Oh, I agree with you on that, Richard. Here's the thing. Millennials have to be almost sat down, and not in a condescending way, like, look, kid. It's more like, look, there's a career path trajectory at this company. I want to help you, but you have to be patient. And I know you have to be patient, but can't exactly believe that you can have that job that Sam over there spent 25 years getting to. I will try to accommodate you as fast as you can. And we'll do that with a peer review. Where would you like to go? You have to realize millennials are independent thinkers. And independent thinkers, a lot of times, do not realize when they have something golden right in front of them. So they might move on. A lot of companies have actually hired people back after a year or two because that millennial realized, oh, I made a mistake in my career. They're not a big fan of staying put, but eventually as they get older, just like us, they're going to realize, okay, there's a structure here. I know I'm in a hurry, but I'm going to manage that differently. I'm actually working on that curriculum right now with the American Management Association. What career guidance can we give the young executive, the young leader that really wants to be ambitious and wants to move a little bit faster? And, millennials have a different mindset. Boomers believed, and even Gen Xers believe, well, I work very hard. I have to be patient here. I want to get to that next level. And now I'm going to get here because I've been at this company long enough to know how everything works, so I should automatically get that promotion. Millennials think a little bit differently. They look at it this way. If I can dig ditches faster than that 50-year-old, then I should be in charge of digging ditches, and I should be telling everybody what to do. So age has been removed from their paradigm and their thinking process because their parents and their teachers taught them that. You have to manage that now a little bit better. So I hope that helped, Richard. I hope that answered all your questions. So there we are, 1 hour exactly. I want to thank everybody. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you, everybody.